Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Winchester City Council's Planning Committee, taking place in the Walton Suite of Winchester Guildhall. It is Wednesday, the 28th of May 2025, and the time is 9:30. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I am Chair of the Planning Committee. Around the table, we have the other elected members of the committee, and we're supported today by a number of officers. Lorna Hutchings, who's the service lead for the built environment, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, the case officers, which will change generally with each item, and Matthew Watson from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. I need to remind you all to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off altogether. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please make sure you look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with our public speaking protocols, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the work of the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Turning now to the agenda, and the first item today, which is the first meeting of this council year, we need to nominate a new vice chair for the committee. So I'd like to nominate Jonathan Williams. Are there any other nominations? And is that seconded, please? Councillor Gordon-Smith, thank you very much. Jonathan, do you want to come and join me up here? Very good. Matthew, do we have any apologies and deputy members?
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. No apologies, Chair, and all members are present. Thank you.
Thank you. Disclosures of interest. I'll kick off with a disclosure of interest in item number 14, which is actually this afternoon. It's in my ward, but I haven't discussed it with anybody or in any way predetermined this application. Any other disclosures of interest, members? Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I need to disclose an interest in item 7. I was a member of the Parish Council Planning Committee that called this to come to you today.
So you'll be leaving the room?
I will leave the room.
Okay, thank you. Any others? No? Yes, Councillor Gordon-Smith?
Well, I have to declare an interest in the development in Grange Road as it's in my ward, but I haven't been in discussion with anybody about it or anything.
And Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. I need to declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect of the items on the agenda today due to my additional role as a Hampshire County Councillor. However, as there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, I have a dispensation granted by the Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters. In addition to that, I have, in my Hampshire County Council division, I have 3 applications. Item number 10 on the agenda, the Rising Sun in Colden Common. Item number 11 on the agenda, 33C New Road, and 15 Prince's Close in Bishop's Waltham. But I've had no conversations with any objectors or applicants regarding those applications.
Thank you very much. That's all very clear. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 16th of April 2025. Members, are these an accurate record of that meeting, please? Is that agreed? Thank you, that's agreed. And finally, if we'd like to accept the update sheet as an addendum to the report, is that agreed? Thank you very much, members. Okay, so we now turn to the planning applications on our agenda. And the first item is number 7, Hambledon Road, Denmead, and our presenting officer is Rose Chapman. Over to you, Rose.
Thank you, Chair. So here we have the red line plan. The application is for a variation of condition to change the use of an existing care home to allow adult users rather than young persons. Hambledon Road is at the pointed cursor to the north here. That's the main access point. And then we have an aerial view. So the site is indicated by the star. As this is a variation of condition, there are no physical changes to the building or any other area of the plot. So we'll go straight into some photos. So this is from the view from Hambledon Road. You can see the parking areas. On this specific day, it was a rather busy day, but you can see that there is sufficient parking on the site to accommodate a number of cars, including 4 for staff, and another 6 or so are available for visitors and residents. So slightly different view from within the site towards Hambledon Road to the existing access. So on the left-hand side here, there was previously an application for some staff accommodation to the rear. So on the left-hand side is the access to that, and on the right-hand side is the amenity space for residents. This was taken from the amenity space for the residents towards the nearest dwelling, which is Duval House to the east. As you can see, there is an existing level of foliage on the boundaries. And this is taken from another angle within the site towards the neighbour. This is taken from the rear of the property towards the staff accommodation at the rear, the flat roof building that you can just about see over the fence. The application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rose. Okay, we now turn to public speaking. We have apologies from the Parish Council, who've recently had a complete change of personnel and they're not able to stand to speak this morning, but we've all read their comments in the relevant section of the report. So we turn to the supporter, Neil March, and also Hayden Foster as well. Okay, so you two will have up to 3 minutes between you, and you know how to operate the microphone, Neil. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Neil March. I'm a Director of Southern Planning Practice and the agent for this application. Sat next to me is Hayden Foster, who is a Director and Registered Manager of the care provider Acorns Healthcare. The property benefits from planning permission, allowing it to be used as a C2 residential care home subject to the limitation by way of condition that it can only be occupied by young persons, although there is no definition of what constitutes a young person, so is open to interpretation. When planning permission was granted, in December 2019, the property was earmarked for use as a children's home, as the applicant already had a number of properties which catered for adult placements with learning difficulties, and they wanted to expand their portfolio. However, there was an urgent need at the time to place a group of adults, albeit young adults in their late teens, early 20s, with learning difficulties. It therefore made sense to place them in the property. This was in March 2021. These occupants have since remained in the property and of course have aged. Additional persons have also moved in, so it is now an adult orientated care property where supported living is provided to 6 residents. This involves the provision of 24-hour care as a minimum of 1-to-1, although in some cases this can be 2-to-1. It depends on the care needs of the service users. They are primarily adults with severe autism. Living in the property with appropriate care support allows them to lead semi-independent lives within the community in accordance with government policy. With the number of autism diagnoses continuing to increase, there remains a very high demand for adult placements. Once they reach the age of 18, they are legally entitled to receive housing support, and many families see this as an opportunity, if they are fortunate enough to be able to find a placement, for their son or daughter to move into a supported living property where they can receive high levels of care appropriate for their needs. This also enables them to build friendships, gain life experience and improve their own self-development. Without these placements, they can, and many do, end up in hospital or in other medical-based care institutions. As far as the applicants are aware, there are no significant concerns with how the property operates, which has now been in operation for over 4 years. The reason the application being submitted is due to the company having recently been bought out and the new owners wanting certainty as to who can occupy the property. It has not been generated by an enforcement complaint. Tellingly, there have been no objections from any residents nor from any statutory consultees, including Hampshire Highways. The only body to raise an objection is the Parish Council and is the reason why this application is before you today. One of their concerns is with the parking. However, it has been demonstrated that the parking area in front of the property, which can accommodate up to 10 cars, is well managed and does not result in adverse parking situations, as acknowledged by Hampshire Highways. This is a much needed facility that has been operating in the same way for over 4 years. Nothing would change. We therefore ask the committee to uphold the officer's recommendation and approve the application to vary the condition to allow the continued use of the premises as a residential care home for supported living for adults aged between 18 to 65 with learning difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the applicants? Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Marsh, how many staff stay in the single-story outbuilding at the rear of the site, and how many vehicles do they use?
So we have 2 to 3 staff on site at one time, and there's 2 vehicles for the individuals that live in the outbuilding.
How many of them are resident in the building at the rear of the property?
2 residents.
And do they have vehicles themselves?
Each individual both has a mobility car, yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Gordon-Smith?
Yes, I'm rather curious. The Parish Council maintained that there's going to be an increased number of trips with adults, with older people, more older residents there. Is that actually the case? I can't see any particular reason for that idea.
No, there's no difference as they are young persons between 18 and 25. There's not going to be an increase from children to when they're adults. They still go to the same day services. They still do the same activities. So they're still doing the same trips with their support staff they would if they were children.
Would they have more or less visitors, do you think?
It's very personal. It depends on how much family they have and depending how many professionals they have involved. But that can vary from individual to individual.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no more questions or clarification. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. If you'd like to switch off the microphones and then return to your seats. Perfect, thank you. Any additional comments, Rose, before we come to questions?
None from me, thank you, Chair.
Right, members, questions on the report, please. Are there any questions to our officer? No questions, so we move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very similar application to one that I've seen in Bishop's Waltham with the same company, and I know that one very familiar. So when I was reading through the papers of this, it very much looked like obviously the company was looking at all its properties and getting things in order properly. I can't see any reason to object to this application. It's providing a decent area for young people to live, you know, despite them being adults rather than children now. So I see no reason to object to this application.
Okay, so no more debate. We move to the decision. So the recommendation on this application is to permit. Can I see all those in favour of that, please? And any against? And abstentions? Okay, so that application is approved. Thank you very much. Councillor Cunningham, do you want to call back in your colleague? Oh. No, she's coming in anyway. Good. Be a slight pause whilst we change the presenting officer. Thank you. We now move to item number 8 on our agendas, which is the application at Clematis Cottage, 54 Grange Road, Alresford, and our presenting officer is Catherine Watson. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. First, I have a couple of updates. On the update sheet, there's an amendment to condition 16, which is to do with removal of permitted development rights. So that just has been expanded to remove all the rights from part 1 and part 1 of the GPDO, and class A, which is to do with hard surfacing. That's part 1 of the GPDO, so that those rights have all been removed. Secondly, a new condition, which will be condition 17, requiring a construction management plan to be submitted, which includes parking, turning, construction of vehicles, deliveries, etc. And then I have a verbal update that isn't on the update sheet. So it's to cover access to the site from Thornton Close. So the wording is: prior to the commencement of works on site, evidence shall be submitted which confirms that the land forming the access to the site from Thornton Close has either been purchased from or rights of access and provision of utilities, service and drainage have been granted by the current landowner. And the reason for that is to ensure that the development is accessible to vehicles and that there is sufficient room to manoeuvre to enter and leave the site safely in either a forward or reverse gear. That ends the update.
Thank you.
So the application is for repair of semi-detached dwellings to the rear of 54 Grange Road. So on the left-hand side, we can see a site plan. So the blue line denotes the existing property, which is 54 Grange Road, and then the red line denotes the rear part of the property plus the access through Thornton Close onto Grange Road. On the right, we can see that the plot 54 has been subdivided, and at the rear, facing onto Thornton Close, is the pair of semi-detached properties. And here we just have another site plan which indicates the properties, but also the parking area at the front, and then partway down what is the existing garden of number 54, there'll be a hedge boundary treatment to subdivide the plot. So here we've got the property shown on Google Street View. So the yellow triangle is the property. Here we've got Thornton Close, which then ultimately leads on to Grange Road. And here is number 54 Grange Road, which is the existing property. So here we have the north or front elevation. Fairly traditional materials, brick, tile, and the two dwellings match each other in design. And then we've got the street scene, and this is from the north, looking from Thornton Close into the site. So the top is the existing street scene, as that's what's already there, and the bottom, you'll see sort of midway along, is the proposed. So you can see how the buildings step down and respect the decline of the land in that area. And here we have a photo towards the north boundary, so that this close board fence denotes the boundary at the rear of the site. And again, so we've got the boundary along here, and then this is looking from the cul-de-sac part of end of Thornton Close, looking towards the cul-de-sac part of the close, and the property boundary is here. And then this is looking from further back along Thornton Close, so it would just be where the red arrow is. So here we have the south or rear elevation. Again, traditional materials and detailing. This is the elevation that will face into the site. And here we have a photo. So this is taken from within the site, looking down towards Thornton Close. So the dwellings will be roughly between these two trees here. And then we've got another photo from closer to the boundary. So again, we've got the boundary onto Thornton Close at the rear and the existing dwellings. And this is a photo looking south towards the back of number 54 Grange Road. And then we've got the east elevation. So this is the elevation that would face onto the existing property number 10, Thornton Close. As you can see, there's a window there, but it'd be obscure glazed and non-opening below 1.7 meters. And then we've got, this is a photo of the elevation of the neighbouring property number 10, so that'd be immediately adjacent. And again, just looking towards the garden of number 10, just the other side of the fence. And then the west elevation, again, the same scenario with the single window, obscure glazed and non-opening. And then this is looking towards the west boundary of the site. So the boundary with the actual road is along here. And again, looking towards the west boundary, and you can see the shrubs and the small trees. And then the ground floor drawings, so sort of open plan, family room, kitchen, dining room, study at the front. And then the first floor, which each property has 2 bedrooms and shared bathroom. And that's just the roof plan. So that concludes my presentation. The recommendation is to permit, subject to conditions within the committee report and on the update sheet, and the verbal condition that I mentioned earlier. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now turn to public speaking. Our first public speakers are the objectors, Jonathan Hickey and James Chaplin. If you'd like to come forward, please. You share 3 minutes, and a timer will show you how much time you have remaining on the screen, and the microphones are switched on by pressing the button at the base. If you could just have one on at a time, that would be great. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, I speak on behalf of the residents of Thornton Close in strong opposition to the application for the new semi-detached dwelling at Clements Cottage. Thornton Close is an unadopted, privately maintained road funded exclusively by the residents through a management company. The proposed development would rely on this road for access, and yet none of the residents who are contractually and financially responsible for its upkeep were consulted. The Highways Authority has raised no objection on the application, but it's important to note they have no authority to grant or assess access rights for over private land, that this is a civil matter, and this planning application fails to consider the legal and financial implications for those of us who maintain and fund this road. Also, the process surrounding this application has felt opaque. The original site notice was placed out of view of Thornton Close, meaning that those of us that were affected were unaware. The landowners have previously told Grange Road residents they planned to build a family home, and yet the original cottage was demolished and replaced with a 4-bedroom house that has now been immediately put up for sale. At no point have the applicants engaged with those whose road they wish to seek to use. From a parking perspective, the proposed dwellings include 4 parking spaces, but make no provision for visitors or service vehicles. Thornton Close is a narrow cul-de-sac where children regularly play, and this development would increase congestion, reduce manoeuvrability, compromise safety, especially for emergency access.
Number 10 Thornton Close is also, which is immediately adjacent to the development site, home to a young child with special educational needs, ADHD and autism. His well-being depends on a calm, predictable environment and access to outdoor space. Prolonged construction noise and disruption, plus the increased traffic and change in surroundings, will cause significant anxiety and distress. This child is protected under the Equality Act 2010, and this impact must be given serious weight in your deliberations. No attempt has been made by the applicant to address or even acknowledge this. Residents of Thornton Close are financially responsible for the road and utilities beneath it. Any damage
Thank you very much, and congratulations on sticking to your 3 minutes. Well done. Okay, members, do we have any questions or clarification for the local residents? Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Could you expand a little bit on the parking, on the fact that there is no permission for any vehicles to pass over the private road? And who is the owner, please?
The owner is a private management company, which was set up by the developer at the time that the road was developed, and they own the road. We have rights over the road pursuant to our original deeds.
Has permission been granted or not? Also, is there
Sorry,
any?
Councillor
Sorry.
Cunningham, just a minute, I'm sorry. Can you just check that the red light is showing on your, that's better, because otherwise people who are watching from home won't be able to hear what you're saying.
I have a feeling they may not have heard what I said on the minute and a half. Is there any way I could?
No, it's
deliver-
fine,
okay.
it's fine. We all heard and we
Okay,
made the
okay,
decision.
that's fine.
That's fine, but just from now on, if you could just try and make sure that the red light is on when you're speaking. Sorry, Councillor Cunningham, if you'd like to ask your question of clarification again, please.
Yes, you mentioned the fact that there was no facilities for the service vehicles at the bottom of the cul-de-sac. Can you tell me if there's any improvement on that, or if there's any situation where we can depend on a turning of the vehicles in question?
Actually, when it comes to the service vehicles, the current waste disposal, they actually have to back in to that part of the cul-de-sac because there is no turning circle at the bottom due to the number of cars that are already parked there. So it actually has to back all the way down. So I'm not sure how that's going to accommodate even more cars being parked there.
Thank you very much.
Could I add to that possibly? I think the plan that was shown in terms of the road and the access was very misleading because it incorporated areas that are designated parking areas already. So there's absolutely no way you could get vehicles turned in any of those spaces that were shown on the red edging on that original plan.
Okay, I think we've got the picture. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Any more questions of clarification? Councillor Gordon-Smith.
I'm slightly curious because you said that length of road gives access to the new plots is a private road. So have the developers applied for an easement to have access over it?
I believe so, but we've not been consulted on the matter because it's a private management company, and as residents, we don't have any membership to that management company. We've been excluded from all conversations and negotiations regarding any private arrangement between the management company and the developer.
I think that's a question for the developer, Councillor Gordon-Smith. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Any more questions? Councillor Lamy.
Thank you. Looking at the picture on page 66, you've got the wooden fence, then you've got a small area of land with a small hedge before you get the footpath. Who owns that piece of land?
That would be Barratt, I believe, the original developer.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. If you'd like to return to your seats, thank you. Our next speakers, we have two local city councillors, Councillor Power and Councillor Pinniger. If you'd both like to come up, or one at a time, don't mind. Good morning, councillors. Thank you for coming along. You have 5 minutes each, up to.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. We must stop meeting like this. I have a few problems with the officer's report, Chairman. Firstly, on page 43, it says there will be a positive impact on the character of the area. I fail to see how Thornton Close residents who will be losing free range car parking spaces, an attractive area of hedge, instead will have a view of bins and 4 parked cars. Will not harm the residential amenity, is a quote from the report as well. More traffic and less parking spaces. It also states that number 54 is currently a bungalow. It is now a 4-bedroom home for sale at 1.25 million. On page 48, again, it refers to a positive impact on the area. I fail to equate that with the removal of greenery. The adjoining property or the adjoining residential dwellings, it only names number 10. If you look at the plan on page 60 of the report, it shows 15 properties in close proximity at this end of Thornton Close. It is very densely packed, and some of these properties have no outside space. Then a few questions. Thank you, Catherine, for showing the pictures of the nighttime parking situation, and I hope that members all saw that. You may want to put it up again. I was going to ask if you had any of the evening parking. And the other question, Chairman, is why were residents of Thornton Close not notified of the planning application? They are the ones most affected by this, and the impact on those on Grange Road is comparatively minor. I also looked at the original planning application for this development. The original application was for 34 houses and 75 car parking spaces, which was rather wonderful. Catherine has done a count of the parking spaces, and apparently there are 56. I could only find 42 plus 8 garages, but as you can see from the photographs, there is very little parking. And finally, Chairman, in summary, these two houses will damage the visual appearance of Thornton Close. They will have a picture of 4 parked cars and a load of bins instead of greenery. It will impact 14 close neighbours, will remove 2 free-range car parking spaces in regular use, and will contribute to even more traffic on Thornton Close, which is already congested and should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we have any questions of clarification? I have one, if I may, Councillor Power. You mentioned that some of the residents don't have any access to amenity space. Can I just ask you where the nearest park is, please, to Thornton Close?
You'd walk to the end of Thornton Close, you would cross Grange Road, and then you would be on Stratton Bates. That's mainly a sports ground, although there is a children's car park, a children's play area at the far end of that Stratton Bates. There is some green space on the site, but it is heavily treed and is very rarely used by anybody. I've never seen anybody playing there. You do see children playing in the street because these houses have very little outside space, if any. There are quite a few flats there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of clarification for Councillor Power? Councillor Pinniger, if you'd like to give us your up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. I agree completely with Councillor Power's views. What I'm also concerned about, rather than running through the same arguments again, I'm very concerned about the impact on the residents of Thornton who appear to have a limited financial liability for a planning application they haven't been consulted over. That the road is private and they have they have to pay towards all of it, and they haven't been properly consulted, it appears. And I'm also concerned about the impact on the child with special educational needs. The impression that's being created, this may not be accurate, but the impression that's being created is of a fairly cavalier, high-handed approach by the developers without consulting the people most affected. And, this could easily come back to create a major problem, not just for the residents, but potentially for the council. I'm not a lawyer. We have a lawyer present who may wish to comment on that, but this doesn't feel like all the people who should have been consulted have been.
Thank you. We now turn to questions of clarification on the local council. If I could just kick off with, you've heard that there are 3 more conditions that we're proposing. The 2 that are on the update sheet, which remove all permitted development rights and also require a construction management plan, which should address all the concerns about the management process, the construction process. And also the final one is a new condition which requires that all these civil matters, which are not planning issues, but they're civil matters to do with the agreement about the management with the management company, payment of compensation for any damage to the road, the access over the green space, and all those issues should be contractually agreed before any construction takes place. And that is a new condition that we are requiring. Do you think that that will address the issues, at least most of the issues that you've been raising?
Thank you, Chair. I think should is the operative word here. And while you can agree compensation for disruption during construction, what about the ongoing impact on the residents of Thornton Close? You know, because of the extra access, perhaps an agreement could address that. I'd be surprised. And also, what are we going to do about the child who has been diagnosed with autism, etc.? How's that going to be tackled? I'm also a little concerned actually about the photos supplied by the applicant, because I don't think the garden shown in the pictures is actually, you know, as it is now. So I'm a little worried about the accuracy of some of the documentation.
Any further questions? We now turn to the supporter, Madhu Mutala. Good morning. Welcome. The microphone is switched on by just pressing the button on the base, and you will have up to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to present this morning, and thank you for Officer's balanced report, which I'm pleased recommends approval. With regards to the among many concerns raised by objectors, I would like to clarify certain points, and if I can use the presentation, thank you, Officer. And the first debate, if you can look at that, had the 54 Grange Road originally agreed to sell the back of the plot, obviously development would have continued if you're looking at that picture, and then therefore developer left strip of land in order for the future development, exactly what we're doing now. And then with regards to the many concerns being the private road and then the congestion of the street. I mean, we've been communication with the Barratt developer 2 years on now, and then we've also obviously agreed a management yearly annual maintenance charge towards the these houses, as well as we're in a later stages of the basically access rights for the access roads with Barratt, and we would obviously reach that point. From here on, I'm sure legals, it costs a huge amount of money going to the further legals, and therefore we obviously want application to be approved. And then obviously we're happy with that condition, all this in place. And then with regards to the parking and looking at these pictures, and I've been myself, the councillor advised us to provide these pictures to the committee in the evening when everybody home. I've just done that, and looking at like 3 occasions of taking the picture, all these houses basically has a parking space at the back, and then allocated parking space not regularly taken. I mean, 3 times I've been not really taken, and therefore for the convenient, people park on the street rather than the lack of parking, again, according to my evidence there. And looking at the middle picture over there, number 10, I mean, this is the most common, where number 10 and 11, they tend to park on the curbside, which obviously appears like it's congestion, but that number 10 never ever taken that allocated space. Next picture, please. And then the most recently is taken at 8 o'clock on 18th March. And then this is the evening. You can see the first picture, the couple of cars on the left. And then again, the visitors parking not taken, as well as the vacant and allocated spaces. And then the number 10 far right, basically that parking lot never taken and then used for some broken washing machine and whatnot. But what I'm saying, people do park because of convenience, which I have no problem with, but reality, there is no parking issues in that development. Then moving on with my rest of presentation, I mean, this is one of the Google picture. You can see there's a parking space allocated up and down, and then there's hardly anything taken, whilst there's a couple of cars on the curbside. And so moving on with my rest of presentation, there have been no objections from any of the consultees regards to the technical matters, and therefore I very much hope that, officers coming to go with the recommendation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions of clarification for Mr. Mutala. Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Thank you. Presumably, these 2 new houses will be contributing to the upkeep of the private road because they will be having access over it. Right.
Yes, Councillor. That is correct. Yes.
Councillor Aaron.
Can I just ask about consultation, which is actually I don't think is a planning matter, but just out of interest and concern for the projectors, what happened over consultation? Why weren't Thornton Close people?
I agree to an extent, error on my part, but we left. We've been receiving comments on this application. We didn't know how to approach. We approached the management company in position and as well as Barrett. And then obviously there's a little bit of error on my part. I could have gone, but I don't know how to approach residents at this stage. I'm not local to that place, but right as and when we received the comments, and I did put an updated sheet regards to certain concerns overlooking and many matters. I did put an updated sheet on the planning portal. And then from here on, if I can add, further in terms of Mr. Hecky, came forward to for the, on behalf of the resident, I'm happy to engage from here onwards with regards to the ongoing discussion with Barrett in terms of the access right and so forth, and also construction management plan and the schedule of works, so that the concerns are, really well taken.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Will these properties be sort of marketed as affordable homes for young people in Alresford?
Not as per the plan at the moment. This is something that we need to look into it. There's no proper plan at the moment on that. Thank you.
Any further questions of clarification, members? What? Yeah. I think we've covered all the issues that came up earlier, haven't we? Thank you very much for your time. If you could switch off the microphone as you leave. Thank you very much. Catherine, do you have any comments before we come to members' questions, please?
Yes, Chair, just to address the concerns of people on Thornton Close not being notified. We would normally, as an initial starting point, notify any property with an adjoining boundary. So that in itself would sort of exclude a lot of the properties on Thornton Close. However, it did come to my attention that the applicant needed to address the access through the red line through the street, which he obviously doesn't own, and so far, therefore, a new application form was required with ownership certificate B signed, which means that the applicant has served notice on the landowner. And once that had been done, I went up and put side notices on Thornton Close and on Grange Road, and those people that had been that had written in provided a comment, and they were notified of this change. Yes, we've sort of done the duty of statutory duty of providing notification of those changes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move to members' questions on the whole report, please. So if you have any questions on the report, members, now's the time to ask them. Councillor White.
So it's regarding the access to the parking. When I was looking at the photos and the plans, it looks quite a tight manoeuvre to get into some of those parking spaces. And I know that you consulted with the Highways Authority, and when they had the what's it called, the vehicle tracking plan, they accepted that. But they said only with a condition that the site splays were kept free of obstruction and not exceeding 1 metre. It's in the planning portal. And so I just wondered whether we needed an extra condition there just to make sure that those parking spaces remain accessible. Because it is especially where there's parked cars in some adjacent parking bays, and parking, as we've heard, is an issue, whether it needs something there just to make sure that in the future those spaces remain sort of viable spaces.
We'll have a look at that, yeah.
So I think that's feasible. The verbal update, we suggested a condition in response to the concerns about a lot of the access issues, but we can also say and the parking spaces that are shown on plan XXX must be kept available for residents of those properties at all times for the lifetime of the permission. We can add that in if you.
Thank you. Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. Sustainability. Again, we're asking for level 4. With the new emerging plan, we're asking for level 5. Why has this not been asked for in this particular case?
Thank you, Chair. As you say, it requests level 4 in our current local plan. Whilst the emerging local plan continues to become more weighty, it still hasn't been adopted. Level 4 it is still a good level of sustainable construction. So yes, that's why level 4 was put forward in the condition.
Can I ask, didn't I understand last time we discussed this that minimum building standards have actually caught up with level 4 and in fact in some cases exceeding it, so that we would expect them to build actually level 4 plus just to reach required standards now?
Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I believe it's building regs, Chair, and there's other regulatory bodies such as building regs that do actually deal with the sort of components of the house itself better than the planning regime, really, in terms of the construction of it in a sustainable way.
Should we not?
I hope that covers your question, Councillor Laming.
Yeah, I was just going to ask it. As the building regs are slightly higher than what we're asking for in planning, shouldn't we be actually asking for building reg standards?
Well, they're not allowed to build without matching the building regulations, so. You keep climbing that particular ladder. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask the officer's advice on what the situation is with the child with extra needs living at number 10, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not entirely sure what how we deal with that in planning terms.
The committee report, the last section of it, does set out the duties in respect to the Equality Act, and that all our applications are therefore assessed in respect of protected characteristics that are in the 2010 Equality Act. So that is contained within the report, but we wouldn't do a specific and unique assessment for particular individuals necessarily in respect of the Equality Act. But of course, we would then be looking broadly at those issues and who that is impacting.
Would that be taken into account in putting together the construction plan particularly, as that's the time when most disruption is likely to happen?
We do have a condition we're on the update, haven't we, about construction management plan? But yes, I wouldn't like to make any particular promises because there's so many different factors to have to take into account when in tight spaces like this, developers are trying to move those developments forward, but certainly if we've got a representation in respect of that, then we can look at that as well in the detail compliance, and that'll be down to the case officer, so that perhaps the area that's chosen for unloading of materials, which might well be, you know, the private road will be disrupted for short amounts of time, can be sort of taken into consideration in how we do manage that. But it's sort of at our discretion, and I wouldn't like to make any commitments or promises to that.
I think, Chair, the fact we're talking about it, obviously the objectors have raised the point, so our duty is engaged in that sense. The Equalities Act, what we call the PZ, the public sector equality duty, is engaged. And as a matter of law, you've got to have due regard to the protected characteristics under the Equality Act. The key part is section 149, subsection 1C. And you've got to seem to advance equality of opportunity between persons who share a relevant protected characteristic and persons who do not share it. So in this regard, ability or disability. And C, foster good relations between persons who share a relevant protected characteristic and persons who do not share it. So the duty is engaged. You have to have due regard. it does not mean necessarily you have to follow and go one way or another. You have to consider it in your decision-making process. That is to say, it's an aspect that goes into your planning toolbox. It has to be in your mind when you come to make your decision. However, what I can say is that there are other parallel regimes which deal with this particular issue. So, for example, under the Environmental Protection Act, noise abatement notices can be served. We have environmental health officers that deal with noise concerns, noise complaints on a daily basis. It's their day job. So there are other parallel regimes that pick up if there are strong amenity concerns in relation to noise or impacts upon a reasonable enjoyment of another person's property, is how we say it. So there are parallel regimes here which could pick up any issues in relation to loud garden noises, out of hours vehicle movements, beeping horns. So your mind should also be considering those other parallel regimes, as it were, those regulatory regimes. The duty is engaged, so as a matter of law, I have to mention that you can turn your mind to it. However, ultimately, we're talking about a suburban environment where there are traffic movements going up and down that road. So you have to weigh that into the balance. What is the baseline here? These are all material planning considerations, as you're aware. And ultimately, it's a matter for you and your good judgment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Small.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got kind of two questions. One is, I understand it's a civil matter, but this access along Thornton Road or Close, what is the deal there? Can they be refused access? Can the owner of the land say, no, we're not going to grant it? Where do they I know it's not our consideration because it's not to do with us, but
Thank you, Chair. As far as I'm aware, yes, the current owner could refuse to either sell the land to the applicant or grant right of access across it. That's, yeah, as you say, that's a separate thing to planning, but it is a possibility. But as the applicant has said, he's already entered into conversation with the landowner with a view to either purchasing or gaining right of access over the land. So that process is already being looked at in advance of any determination of this application. Thank you, Chair.
thank you. Obviously there's no evidence of that, so I suppose take it with a pinch of salt. But the other question
I think that's
is,
covered in the condition that we're proposing
I
to
understand
add.
that. The other thing is the patch of land that would be removed, so the greenery and the shrubbery. Obviously that's not in these plans because it's outside the red line. So would they need to submit, say they were given permission, would they then have to submit another planning application to remove that? Because that is obviously the original planning application for the estate and as part of the landscaping.
Thank you, Chair. If you look to the map plan on the left, you'll see the red line, which includes that strip of land. It's the red line is denotes the site boundary and not ownership. So we've got the blue line, which is currently what the applicant owns, and then the red line, which this was submitted at a later date than the original red line, because it needs to take into account the access from Thornton Close, but it has been included in the red line, so we wouldn't expect a new red line plan to be submitted because it's all covered within what's on the screen.
Would the loss of that green area be taken account of in the biodiversity net gain calculations and the agreement about that?
The application itself, I think, came in just before the statutory biodiversity net gain requirement. However, we do, as usual with this type of development, we do always put I've requested a biodiversity enhancement plan as condition 6. The area of grass, the sort of triangle of grass, it's not particularly productive in terms of biodiversity, but certainly condition 6 allows for quite a lot of flexibility to to request certain types of habitat that would be best for that environment. So I would say, Chair, that condition 6 would cover that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Laming.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, help me out on this, Catherine. On page 65, we've got a picture of the front of this particular green patch, and you've got a street light. Now, will that street light need to be moved? And we've also got bin store on it. What has been proposed for the changes there? Because if you move the street light, it's going to come in front of the next door's house.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that I'm not sure whether the street lights were installed by Hampshire County Council or who would usually deal with street lights, or whether because it's a private development they were installed as part of that development. I would certainly, if it's Hampshire County Council, I don't know whether they'd be likely or not to permit moving the street lamp, but it's not a planning issue per se. It's more to do with the practicalities of moving or the street lamp, and if it's not able to be moved, then that could impact on the deliverability of the scheme.
I think, councillors, you have to bear in mind this is a private road, so it's not Hampshire Highways, and they haven't maintained this at public expense, so it's a private road, and ultimately the frontages here are responsible for, one, the upkeep, two, the maintenance, and indeed the safety along that particular street, as it were. We've heard from the applicant they're in talks with Barrett's or indeed the Manco, the management company here, about securing or being part of that payment regime for the maintenance, safety and upkeep of that particular street. There are mechanisms in the Highways Act where Hampshire can step in, for example, on a private road, but it's very, very rare. They can actually call the frontages to account and ask the frontages to do certain things. Section 230 under the Highways Act deals with that particular point. But ultimately, it's for the frontages along that street to come to an arrangement through a management company to deal with lighting, safety, the upkeep and maintenance. And we've heard from the applicant they're in the conversation with the Manco or indeed Barrett's here to secure the necessary rights. Ultimately, if that right isn't given, for example, to park on the street, it will be a trespass. It will be a civil matter. So the applicant here is beholden by those conversations, which are a private law matter. That is ultimately a private issue between the applicant, Barrett's and or the Manco, the management company. Here we're talking about a public law regime and the planning regime, and yes, the two do collide, and I appreciate that we've heard that perhaps some residents weren't aware of conversations, but ultimately those conversations are private because there is obviously a financial issue, and it's a matter for the applicant to come to terms, as it were, in that regard with Barrett's or indeed the management company. That's a private issue. Those rights may or may not be forthcoming, and ultimately the condition we've asked for today gives some degree of comforture in the sense that once those rights are given, for example, over the ransom strip immediately to the front, and or the right to park, to have access, to drain, to put sewers, for example, or whatever from the front of the property to the connecting sewerage along that particular street. Once those terms have been agreed, then the condition can be discharged. So you see that the condition is what we call a pre-commencement condition. The developer here cannot commence until those particular rights, services, utilities, deeds of easements, whatever it is that needs to be secured. Once they have been secured, the planning authority can then be certain and sure that the development can commence, because there, one, won't be a trespass, two, there won't be drainage issues, three, there won't be lighting and safety issues, and four, there won't be ongoing maintenance concerns where this particular scheme is parking for free or whatever, because ultimately those rights would have been secured. I think that's as far as the public law regime can go to ensure that in terms of planning, the safeguards are there. The local planning authority can prohibit development, until the necessary legals have been completed. I think that's the best I can do for this particular committee because we're not privy to those conversations.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so any more questions on the report? If not, we move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I visited the site last night, actually, following Councillor Power's written representation to suggest visiting in the evening in regards to the parking issues. I did note that there was it was a very sort of busy area. However, with the new properties being offered, being 2-bed and being offered 2 spaces each, I don't think we would, although I understand the parking is of a situation that is quite poor around there, I don't think it could be substantial enough to refuse the application on that merit. The civil matter in regards to access is something that I'm very concerned about, and I really do welcome the condition, a condition that we don't normally sort of get to see coming on applications in order to resolve those civil matters which we have no control as a planning committee over prior to any commencement of the development. So I think that's something substantial and something really welcome. I do still have concerns in regards to management companies in general. Again, this is not something that as a planning committee we can really sort of go around, but the fact that these management companies you don't have any automatic representation as residents on those the private estate management companies is really quite appalling and does leave sort of residents really sort of out there on a limb. I live on an estate where there's private management companies as well, so I really understand and really feel for you in regards to that. I do also welcome the additional conditions in regards to the construction management plan. I think that really needs to be carefully thought about with the development of these, and a reduction to the disruption of the residents who live there, especially around when contractors are coming in and ensuring that they are following the construction management plan and not just parking on curbside and really disrupting the parking around there for residents. But then also in regards to the removal of permitted development rights to ensure that if there are any alterations or removal of parking spaces or any buildings that are to go there, they would have to come back through a full planning application as well. So although on balance I will be supporting this, I really do empathise with the residents, but I think on balance there isn't enough to sort of sway me to object to this proposal, unfortunately. So I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Laming.
Thank you. We've heard a lot from the legal side today, which is really appreciated because I think it sets the scene quite a lot. However, I am very concerned with this, with the access, with the change to the view of the local street, and taking into account, I think it's overdevelopment of that particular corner of the site, and taking into account the duty of care that also was brought up today. I find this extremely difficult, and I will contemplate this between now and listening to what other people say.
Any further? Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Well, I suppose I have the advantage of knowing this road quite well and living in the town. I think we need to recall that we're a planning committee. Things like legal access over a private road is not a planning issue. And ironically, I can remember when this development was built, whenever it was 15, 20 odd years ago. And of course, if that site had been brought into the package at the time, there wouldn't have been any argument. You could have built it out in a logical order. There wouldn't be any argument about the street scene. And I think that's worth bearing in mind. I have to say, I agree with Councillor Power's thing that it's quite stretching a point to argue it has a positive impact. I think at least you could say it doesn't do visual damage. Two fairly innocuous houses in keeping with what's there at the moment. Again, the construction disturbance, well, unfortunately, that's very common in practically all sites, and it's a matter of having a good construction management plan and also good adherence by the contractors with the regulations. And of course, that doesn't always happen. Parking, I mean, I know this is an issue in that road, and a lot of it is down to careless parking, vans left where they obstruct and so on. But that's not strictly a planning issue. It's down to the way that we behave as humans. And I can't therefore see any solid planning reasons for refusing this application. So I think I will have to support the officers in it.
Thank you. Any further debate? Perhaps I could just add, I did go and visit this site as well myself, had a good drive round, walk round, a good look round. I accept entirely what Councillor Gordon Smith has just said, that this site, as the owner pointed out at the beginning, you know, perhaps should have been involved right at the beginning, and then it would have been built out at the same time as the others, and we wouldn't have the concerns that we are looking at now. But I do think that we've taken a belt and braces approach to the conditions, and that we have done as a planning committee as much as we possibly can to address the concerns of local residents, and that at the end of the process, I hope that we will all be perfectly happy. It'll be two perfectly nice little family homes, exactly the sort of homes that I know we are desperate for in Alresford and throughout the district. For local people, hopefully, who can afford these, they're 2-bedroom houses. They should be, you know, they shouldn't be too expensive. We have an assumption in this area in favour of development, and we all know the enormous pressure that planning committees and local authorities across the country are under at the moment to provide more housing for our population. All planning decisions are a balance, and you have to balance the weight of that huge pressure against, you know, the concerns of local people. And I think that we've done our very best this morning to address those concerns, to recognise them, and to do what we can as a planning committee in terms of conditioning to address those and to mitigate those. But of course, you know, it's going to cause disruption, it's going to cause concerns. But I hope that the developer is here this morning. Thank you very much for coming along and not sending an agent or whatever. You've listened to this morning's debate, and I hope that you will take all that on board and during the construction phase, be as considerate as it is possible to be towards your very close neighbours. So I will be supporting the recommendation. Is there any more debate, members? So we move towards the decision. This recommendation is to approve the application. Can I see all those in favour, please? Those against? So that application is approved. And we'll now take a break until 11 o'clock for coffee. Thank you. So I think we're just past 11 o'clock. So we'll start the next session of today's planning committee. We move to item number 9 on our agendas, which is the application at 39 Francis Gardens in Winchester. And our presenting officer is Charlotte Smith. Over to you, Charlotte. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. As you know, this application has been referred to committee due to the number of objections received. So this slide shows the location plan. You can see there is a significant gap to the east of the property, and the plot is significantly roomy. This is the aerial view of the site with the property indicated by the yellow star here. Slide 4 shows the proposed block plan. You can see there remains a reasonable gap and distance between the extension and the boundary here. This slide shows the existing floor plans. For comparison, this slide shows the proposed floor plans. Slide 7 shows the existing elevations. For comparison, slide 8 shows the proposed elevations. The plot is sufficiently large enough to support the level of development proposed, and there remains a good distance to the boundary on the eastern side. For clarity, the tree here is proposed for removal, which has had no objections from our tree officer. The next slide shows the proposed elevations of the garden, store and office. So the garden store is at the top there, and the garden office is at the bottom here. This slide shows the site as it is currently, with particular focus on the eastern boundary here, where the 2-storey side extension is proposed. And finally, this slide shows the site from the neighbouring dwellings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now turn to public speaking. And the only public speaker we have is James Bowman and Tony Blunn, who are the supporters. Good morning, gentlemen. If you'd like to switch on the microphones when you're ready, one at a time, if that's okay, just by pressing the button on the base of the units, just check the red light is showing. And you have up to 3 minutes between you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for giving the opportunity to speak. My name's James Bowman. I'm the owner of the property and the applicant for the proposed project. I'm joined by Tony here, who's the project architect, who's available for any particular architectural design questions. I just wanted to start really, but my family and I have lived in Hampshire all our lives, and when we purchased the property, we were particularly drawn to this location, to this part of Winchester, due to the walkable access to local schools for our children, the train station and the high street. The purpose of this proposal is to modernise and refresh the property for our long-term family home, and it's a personal project. The proposed extension sits comfortably within the plot, and it's been carefully designed both for the character of the existing property and the surrounding context in mind. The eastern section of the extension is intentionally set back from the front elevation of the main house to maintain the existing street scene. The pitched roof design reflects the form of the existing dwelling, allowing the extension to blend in seamlessly to the existing architectural context. The lightweight garden home office is positioned on an existing block paved area and remains out of sight from neighbouring properties. As a family, we want to support biodiversity and sustainability of our home environment, and as part of proposed improvements, we plan to install bird boxes, pat boxes, create dedicated vegetable patches, and also additional planted flower beds throughout the existing lawns and gardens. We believe this proposal reflects a thoughtful and balanced approach to improving and modernising our family home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for either the architect or the applicant? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Will you be planning to replace the tree that will be taken down?
Yes, we will.
Thank you very much. I think that's it. Thank you very much. You may return to your seats. Thank you. Thank you. Charlotte, do you want to update us on anything following that contribution?
I will just add that the tree proposed is in this top corner here. Thank you.
Right, members, questions on the report? Any questions to our officer on the report? Clearly an excellent report that covers every point that anybody could possibly ask about. So if there's no questions, debate. Is there any debate, members? I'd just like to say I'm pleased to see that at number 5 in the conditions we have a construction management plan will be put together, because whilst there's plenty of room on this particular plot, the surrounding houses, that it is quite close, isn't it? It's quite tight. So I think to reassure local residents, we will have a proper construction management plan, which hopefully will address any issues that residents have raised. And I think that anything else, issues about overlooking, have been addressed by having windows obscure glazed and so on. So I think that any issues that have been raised, and I've read the objections, are addressed by conditions to mitigate them. So if there is no more debate, we turn to the decision. So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approving this? That's all members. Lovely. So that application is approved. Thank you very much. Good. So we now move to item 10 on our agendas, which is at the Rising Sun, 27 Spring Lane, Colden Common. And our presenting officer is Ethan Townsend. So over to you, Ethan. Thank you. Oh, I think we've got a slight technical issue. We'll just sort this out so that people can actually see what we're talking about. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Ethan. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, members. Today I'll be walking you through the Rising Sun at 27 Spring Lane in Colden Common, and the application is for a ground floor single-storey extension. There we go. The application site, as you can see, is edged in red, and it includes a public house and its associated grounds. It's on a residential street on Spring Lane in Colden Common, with residential properties surrounding it to the north, south, east, and the west is the chapel. Here, the aerial view shows it puts the site into context in the rest of Colden Common. As you can see, there's a blue line to the east of the site which shows the public right of way running down Hill Lane. But it's to the east of the site and it runs to the south. There we go. So the existing pub is a two-storey building that has been extended in its past lifetime previously. There are single-storey side elements coming off from the eastern elevation and the west elevation. The property is a painted masonry building with a slate roof, and all the fenestration is timber. Now, in comparison, so you can see for the proposed elevations, I'll try and walk this through with you. The single-storey side extension is proposed to this western elevation here. So pretty much in between where the two windows are. That's where the side extension starts. It's not very clear from the plans, but the floor plans will show it later on to make it a bit clearer. The proposed side extension has a window to the front and two windows pretty much as existing currently on the side elevation. And as you can see, there is here. And then for the floor plan, so you can see there's on the proposed ground floor plan, there is a slightly darker lined colour where you can see where the extension's coming from. So it's moving in towards where the car park area is. And you can see in red, there's a window to the front and two windows to the side. It's about a 31 square metre floor space extension. There we go. So here we have the existing car parking arrangements and the proposed car parking arrangements. So there isn't any change in access with this application, but there is going to be a reconfiguration of the car park. So as you can see on the left-hand side, there is 16 spaces as existing, and on the right-hand side, there is 16 spaces just in a reconfigured sort of layout. So you can see that the space number 16 has been moved into the central spot in the car park. And as you can see on the proposed site plan here in the dark-edged part of the building, that is where the proposed side extension is going. Now moving on to site visit photographs. So on the top left, you can see the front of the pub, and this is the eastern single-storey side element, which isn't being extended upon. Whereas on the top right, here you can see my mouse, perfect. This is the single-storey side element to the western elevation, which is being extended upon. So the extension will come from this extension out over here. I think it's about 5.3 meters out into where the car parking area is. And on the bottom right, at bottom, you can just see the front elevation of the pub. Here you've got some more photos of the pub, so you can see sort of on the top left, you can see where the extension's going to go. And this is in the top right, this is a side view of the pub taken from within the car park grounds. And on the bottom right, this is another structure which isn't associated with this application, which is subject to an enforcement appeal. It's not related at all to the proposed development. And on this slide, I've got a few photographs just showing you the existing car parking arrangements and what the car parking situation looks like at the site. Obviously, to the rear of the car park, you can see that there is a pub grounds, which is used for garden and sort of play area. And as specified previously, there will be 16 spaces retained, just in a reconfigured format. Thank you for listening. The recommendation is to approve as the proposal complies with the local plan policies as set out within the report.
Thank you very much. Right, we now turn to public speaking, and our first speaker is Francesca Santovito. Good morning. You're very welcome. You have up to 3 minutes to talk to us, and that's it. If you just make sure the red light is showing before you start speaking. Perfect. Thank you.
Good morning, Planning Committee. My name is Francesca and I'm a direct neighbour of the Rising Sun pub. And I live in a residential detached property less than a metre from the premises where I've lived for the past 26 years. I'm here to formally object to the proposed extension and modification as they will exacerbate an already intolerable situation for myself and the local community. Firstly, noise pollution is a significant issue. Even with my windows and doors closed, I can hear loud music and disturbances from inside the pub every weekend and often during the week. This continues beyond licensing hours on a regular and consistent basis and spills into the streets, leading to drunken and disorderly behaviour. Patrons routinely shout, sing, bang around, bang on tables, stamp on tables and bang on neighbours' fences and engage in antisocial acts late into the night. The garden and the car park already generates excessive noise, and despite an abatement notice being issued, the pub routinely and consistently breaches it. Furthermore, the illegally erected wooden structure serves as a focal point for disturbances, with patrons throwing bottles, glasses, cigarette ends, rubbish, stones and bricks over neighbouring fences, some causing damage to homes such as broken windows, which has been reported to the police. The pub has taken over its car park with seating and encouraging large and loud gatherings directly on neighbouring and boundary fences, worsening noise and antisocial behaviour. In addition, seating and parasols have been erected directly against neighbouring fences where barbecues are held, causing smoke, smells, noise, intrusion into properties and obstruction of views and light, as well as creating a fire risk for neighbouring properties. The Rising Sun has a pattern of disregarding planning regulations. They previously constructed a kitchen extension without securing prior planner permission, only seeking approval after the structure was built. This kitchen extension was built directly on my boundary fence, and the Party Wall Act was not applied at that time either. Despite this blatant non-compliance, Winchester City Council granted retrospective planning permission without imposing any conditions to protect the neighbouring properties. As a result, extractor fans and extractors from the Kitchens pub vent directly into my property, causing ongoing disturbances and environmental issues. In addition, kitchen deliveries are made as early as 5 AM, as close as a metre away from residents' bedroom windows. This is a failure to enforce proper regulations and has already had a negative impact on residents, and allowing further extensions would only without strict oversight will only worsen an already unacceptable situation. The drastic reduction in car parking spaces, which was 40 until they started to put seating areas in the car park area, has reduced it from 40 to 16, which is already causing congestion, with patrons parking irresponsibly on double yellow lines, junctions, verges and pavements, obstructing residents' driveways in violation with the Highways Act of 1980. Beyond these immediate concerns, this situation is also affecting the broader community. The late night disturbances and ongoing issues are reducing
I'm
property
afraid that's
value.
the end of your time,
sorry.
but I think you've got your point very clearly across. Thank you very much indeed. And indeed, members may have questions of clarification for you. Do we have any questions of clarification for the neighbour? So can I just ask about the kitchen extension? Not that it's to do with this application, but that the vents go straight through onto your property without any conditions. Ugh. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Any more questions, members? No? All right, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now we have the ward councillor, Councillor Sue Cook. If you'd like to come forward, Sue, good morning. And Sue, you have up to 5 minutes, as you know, and over to you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the planning meeting, officers and members, if there are any, from the general public. I, Councillor Sue Cook, one of the ward councillors, wishes to publicly acknowledge the recommendation for approval of this application. But that aside, this mustn't detract from other outstanding issues upon this public house site. The report clearly states the application has been recommended, and as I say, for approval, it's considered that it is of a modest extension to the existing community asset pub. I wish to add at this point, it's actually a breath of fresh air that we have an application here before us, before any work takes place, thus then becoming a retrospective application. And those of you around this table know how I feel about those. Or worse still, let's build it like the wooden structure out the back, get the enforcement department involved, and then stop that because there's appeal taking place. So never mind all the changes, let's talk about the kitchen area. Then eventually an application was put in. So back in 1997, they had conditions that the car park, as we've heard, should have been a minimum of 40 spaces. But clearly we now have 16. And I quote Hampshire Highways, which looks to me like a copy and paste answer. It's down to the planning authority and the Winchester City Council, as they are the planning authority. Hampshire Highways doesn't have any concerns regarding the overspill of the parking. But what about all the cars that are parking down the road, double yellow lines, etc.? And they raised no objection to this proposed development. Back in February 25 of this month, of this year, now in the officer's report, Hampshire County Council introduced parking standards. In fact, it should in fact be 17 spaces for this application, but here we are at 16. So basically, if you turn up, you've got nowhere to park, you either double park or you park down the road, which is not fair to the residents of Spring Lane. I think not. I should also like to add at this point, why have there not been any conditions attached to this application? Now, you could say this is to do with licensing, so I could be wrong, but keeping doors closed when there is an entertainment on, keeping windows closed again when there's entertainment on, and themed evenings. Smoking area, which is currently at the front, will then be moved to the rear, moving more customers to the rear of the actual, you know, the pub, which is not fair to the residents that live with their gardens so close with the general loud music and rude behaviour or general behaviour. Also, why hasn't the environmental team mentioned the S80 notice served under the Environmental Protection Act due to the noise from the garden? Penalties for not complying with an abatement notice, I'm sure you all know this. They can be prosecuted either with an amount set by the court or get their licence called in, which we would like. I asked the officer and the planning committee to think of this. If the decision is to accept the officer's recommendation for approval, can I please ask, for the sake of nearby residents, a construction management plan be added that whilst building work commences, no deliveries of work commences before the time of 9 AM in the morning, as there's a nursery nearby and there is a school, and it would in fact impact dramatically on the nursery, and it's literally down the road. No work takes place on a Sunday, and limited hours with the notice of a Saturday work only in the morning. I urge the planning committee to take all that I have said and the resident that previously spoke. I respect and understand the officer's recommendation, but with all that has happened and is still taking place, the conditions would be appreciated. I was really hoping to actually meet Mr. Spencer today because I understood he was going to be speaking. But what I would ask him this, and I hope he watches or listens to this recording of what I'm about to say. You have a public house. I'm an ex-licensee myself. And the most important thing to do is not just look after your customers, but talk to the residents around you, engage in conversation with them. And they won't necessarily become your best friends, but by talking to one another, you can sort things out. So thank you for allowing me to speak, Madam Chair and the Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cook. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for the local councillor? Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Councillor Cook, I wonder, you said this pub is rated as a community asset.
That is correct, yes. Colden Common, at one stage, the public house, as I understand, was vacant for some considerable time. So there have been a number of different companies that have operated from there. And you can, as I understand, you can, as a parish council, attain it as a community asset.
Right. So could one deduce from that that there's some sort of popularity for it in that case and demand for it?
There most certainly is a demand for the public house, without a doubt, but that's not what we're here to talk about today, in the form of how popular it is. And I commend the licensee for his forward thinking and how he's engaging with his customers, but not how the behaviour is with some of the customers, and he needs to engage more with nearby residents. Thank you.
Councillor Langford-Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that the reason for expanding the facility is to provide more indoor seating capacity. Would that not lessen the noise that is outside, in your opinion?
It's a very good question. Obviously, the whole idea of it, the extension, is to enable there to be more people to visit the pub. And I commend them for that. Now, I don't see that perhaps as a planning material reason, but I understand your question in the form of by allowing more people to sit there. But if it becomes popular anyway, and with our weather conditions, would you not think that perhaps then people don't necessarily want to always be inside? So I hope that sort of answers your question, but it's all about footfall, isn't it? And bottoms on seats, if I may say that. Thank you.
Any further questions to the local councillor, members? No? Thank you very much, Councillor Cook. You may return to your seat. Thank you. And Is Jonathan Spencer not here? Is this the publican? Yeah. No. Not here. Okay, so we will turn back to you, Ethan. Could you just tell us, first of all, is there anything you want to add before we come to questions?
Yeah, there's a few things that I will add just based on what's been said. Obviously, the application here, we're only considering this single-storey ground floor extension. We can't consider what's been approved previously, and also we can't consider the enforcement notice appeal, nor could we not determine this application based on that, because there's no provisions in the Town and Country Planning Act to do so. I will say I've been to the pub and I've actually spoken to the neighbours quite a few times during the course of this application and the last one, and I can understand some of their concerns with regards to how the pub is being run, but a lot of those concerns fall outside of what we can consider under the Town and Country Planning Act. That would be under the Environmental Protection Act, or it would be under their licence. So we are in a position where we have to make a decision, obviously, on this application based on what's been provided. Obviously, I know Councillor Cook raised a condition, and we'd have to decide whether or not that would meet the 6 tests of being, reasonable, enforceable, relevance planning, and the other 3 tests, which are in my head, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But yeah, I think that's all I need to add on with regards to that.
All right, members, so we will now move to questions on the report. Can I just ask why there isn't a construction management plan in the conditions, and is it possible to add one in, given, as Councillor Cook said, that it's a sensitive area in terms of school and nursery and not blocking the road and so on?
Yeah, I mean, normally when we're looking at extensions to pubs, and this pub of the extension in this size is quite modest, we wouldn't usually add a construction management plan. If that's a concern and we view it's relevant, it could potentially be added. My only concern, and I have to ask Dan and Lorna on this, is if it's a pre-commencement condition, we'd normally need the approval of the applicant or agent. Is that so? If they're not here, we can't get their approval for that condition to be added. That's my only concern.
We can delegate that wording back to us, I think, which might include just getting their agreement, or we can slightly tweak the trigger point so it's not pre-commencement. That's all right.
Okay, I think we'll accept that, and a construction management plan of some kind is a good idea for this site. Thank you. We'll sort that out between us afterwards. Councillor White.
So it's been noted that there's only 16 car parking spaces. The recommendation is for 17. Does that, the way they calculate that, does that take into account the outdoor seating as well? Because that could add to the number of people.
Yeah, I will say, first of all, with regards to the car parking standards, they are from 2002, so they are quite outdated and they do probably need updating. But with regards to where you get the figure from, the 17 number, that is in relation purely to internal bar area. So it doesn't include other parts of the pub. It's purely the bar area and the trade area. So that's where you've got the 17 spaces. I will note, obviously, historically, yes, they did need, the previous condition did say that they need 40 parking spaces. That hasn't been complied with in well over probably 20 years. I had a look today on Google Earth and I saw in 2005, I think they had probably 22 parking spaces. So there has definitely been a reduction in that. We've never had a complaint from planning enforcement saying that, you know, people haven't complied with this, and 40 is quite a lot. Back then it probably, they viewed it to be reasonable, whereas nowadays we do have a less reliance on a car, and you're in a sustainable location in the centre of Golden Common with a bus stop just down the road. So these are all factors we have to consider. Does that answer your question? Sorry, thanks.
Councillor Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. The issue seems to be, having settled that issue of the number of parking spaces within the property, the issue seems to be on parking more that extra cars, more than the ones supplied inside the property, park on the road outside. Apparently on double yellow lines. I wonder whether you visited there, whether you formed an opinion of the sort of parkability of the road outside in terms of yellow lines, etc.
So my issue is, obviously I work in work hours and I've only ever been to the pub probably around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, which is it's not busy at that time, obviously. So the car park every time I've been has been empty. People do park along that road. There is on-road parking, which is available to residents, every time I've been to the site, I parked either on that road and not had an issue, or using the pub car park because it's been empty. So I don't have any personal experience of any issues. And the issue is obviously as well, we can't always ascertain if people are using the car parking space in the pub might not even be using the pub. They might use it. I know for a fact people use it for school drop off and pick up. So it's not always just associated with the pub. But my view on this is generally we're in a position where, you know, Hampshire as the statutory consultee on highways and overspill parking have said that they don't have any concerns. So it's hard, it wouldn't be possible, in my view, to refuse an application on those grounds.
Thank you.
Councillor Aaron, could you switch off your microphone, please? Thank you. Further questions? So you said in your summary after public speaking that a lot of the issues that have been raised, particularly by Councillor Cook, on the antisocial behaviour, noise, and so on, are not actually issues that we as a planning committee can address. They are issues that the licensing committee, for instance. So if that sort of behaviour continued, then the licensee, their license would be at risk, wouldn't it? So that's the direction that residents could take in terms of complaining about those issues. It's not something that we can address here now, looking at this particular application.
Yeah, that's correct. And I will also add, it is in the report, but if the pub does get extended, they will have to apply to vary their premises licence anyway. So that sort of does go hand in hand. The licence itself, I've seen a copy of it. It is an old licence. There could be some things that could be tweaked. Specifically, I know Councillor Cook mentioned about the windows and the doors. That's not something that we could enforce as a planning condition. Whereas licensing, that would come under the licensing regime.
Good. So if there are no more questions, we move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate obviously Councillor Cook coming today and explaining the sort of wider situation in regards to the pub. I think what we've heard most recently, and we do have the chair of the licensing committee in the room as well, who will obviously be listening quite keenly in regards to the fact that they will need to apply for a new licence. You know, once this extension is built out. As sort of mentioned, unfortunately, as a planning committee, we are unable to take into consideration those sort of licensing concerns. But I think they have been really well voiced today, and I think that in a future licensing application, I do hope you've written down what you've said today in order to sort of repeat it at a licensing committee hearing. But unfortunately, there's no planning sort of reasons why we're unable to approve this application.
Councillor Aaron.
Hello, thank you, Chair. So similarly, the objections to, for instance, the fan creating unpleasant aromas, etc., not our responsibility, but environmental health might well be interested to hear about that sort of thing.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. We are here just to look at the planning implications of this. A lot of what we heard today refers to the licensing, and you are quite able to ask for a review of licensing, and that will control the noise and opening and closing times. So I'm sure that Councillor Cook knows all about that, being the next licensee. So I dare say we'll be hearing about that fairly soon.
Right, so we now move to the decision. So with the extra condition requiring a construction management plan, This application is recommended for approval. So can I see all those members in favour of approving this application, please? That's all members. So that application is approved. Thank you very much. And our final application before lunch is the at 33C New Road, Colden Common, and our presenting officer is again Ethan Townsend. So if you'd like to give us your presentation, please, Ethan.
Thank you. This application is for 33C New Road, Colden Common. It's for a single-storey front side extension. So first, here's an aerial photograph of the site. As you can see, the application site is etched in red, and it is on the western side of this small terrace of 4 properties. It's semi-detached, so detached from this neighbouring property to the west. Yeah. The proposal seeks to add a small front side extension, which is attached to this existing utility room of the property. As you can see here are the existing and proposed plans. So from the front elevation, you can see that the extension comes out. It's flush with the front wall of the property. It would have a pitched roof. All of the materials would be matching materials, and there'll be a window on the front and on the rear. Yes. And here's the floor plan showing the existing and proposed. So the single-storey side extension would just go to the front of the existing utility room. There'd be some internal alterations to allow obviously access through the utility and the craft room. And there's about a 1.3 metre gap from the front of the extension to the side boundary. Here are some photographs of the street scene and the application site. A lot of these properties look fairly similar, so I'll point out which one is the application site. The one on the top left is not, it's the one on that's on the eastern end of this row of 4 houses, whereas on the top right, this is the application site here. On the bottom left, you can sort of see a middle view of the property, although I think they're the same photograph actually. You can see the middle of this terrace of properties. Here we go. So in the top left, you can see the application site here. So the utility room is going to go where this blue fencing is at the moment. Sorry, this the side extension is going where this blue fencing is, and you can just about see the utility room from the road. On the top right, you can see the relationship between the utility room and the neighbouring property here, number 35 New Road. And the bottom photograph just shows the other properties along New Road. So there's a sort of variation in character between the two. There we go. The top left photograph just shows a closer up of where exactly it's going to go. Obviously, this fence panel would be removed, and this gate entrance would be relocated slightly just so the applicant can access the side of their property. In the bottom left corner, you can actually just see the area where the proposed extension is going to go. So it is really modest in scale. And here is just a view looking sideways towards the neighbouring property. This sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like a gate structure is going to go, and this covered sheltered area would also be removed to make room for this proposed side extension. Yeah. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and the recommendation is to approve the application.
Thank you very much. We have one supporter, Mr. Craig. No, we don't. We don't have any public speakers. Members, questions on the report? This application has had to come to committee because the applicant is a member of staff, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So that's why it's here. So if there are no questions on the report and any debate, so this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour, please? Thank you very much. So that application is approved, and we will return at 2 o'clock for the afternoon. We could have done those this morning. Never mind. This afternoon at 2 o'clock. What is the arrangements for lunch? You just switch off the Mayor's Parlour. Mayor's Parlour for sandwiches. Thank you.